Extraction 2 is directed by Sam Hargrave and stars Chris Hemsworth, Idris Elba, and among others. And this story, it deals with Tyler Rake, who is recovering from his wounds from the first film, and he gets a job from Idris Elba in order to rescue this family of this crime lord that's in the country of Georgia. And along the way, he comes into some contact with a lot of his enemy forces that he's being held in this kind of prison area. And it gets into basically a race against time with trying to rescue them and get out. Kind of like the first film where he's having to go in and extract them and then pretty much leave. Now here's a little backstory. Now the first film I really enjoyed from the same director of Sam Hargrave, who did the first Extraction, and I thought that the first Extraction was a blast with being able to showcase a lot of brutal stuff that, showcased with Chris Hemsworth as an action star. And while I always enjoyed Chris Hemsworth in a lot of the other films he's in, especially playing as Thor and everything, it's always great to see him kind of branch out into some other stuff that, he kind of takes a more serious route with certain films, especially like he did with 12 Strong and just certain other films that he's really suited with when it comes to outside the Marvel films. And I felt like with the first film, they really gave him a lot of great vulnerability. He was badass with being able to take down a lot of, bad guys and stuff. And it just showcased a lot of the, great stunt work that they really utilize with it being a director that's known for stunt work and everything. And so going to this film, it got me interested but at the same time, I was kind of skeptical because I kind of thought that the first film was kind of leaving things kind of more ambiguously. And I really think that had the movie kind of really been more of like a self-contained kind of film, I didn't really expect them to really do much with a second film of all things. But I'm glad the movie did come out though, because I think this definitely was a worthy sequel. And so to get my pros out of the way, I thought that the cast in this were all great as usual. Chris Hemsworth continues to be great in these kind of action films, especially like it was in the first film, where he is going through some major shit in this film, where he is, kind of like, especially like in the first half of the film, where he's shown a lot of vulnerable side, where he's getting his ass beat, getting shot, getting stabbed, all kinds of stuff. Anything that you can really think of, like, he goes through it. And while it can be questionable on how some of the stuff that he can survive in certain areas as the movie goes along, you do kind of question. But knowing a guy of his skills and stuff, I can really buy of what he was going through with this journey that he takes with everything. You also get into some other backstory that's involved with film more this time that I think really was very emotional, and it showcased a lot of Chris Hemsworth as an actor that I really like when he plays in these kind of serious roles. I won't go into too much detail, but when it reveals a certain backstory about his character and stuff, especially that involves with his ex-wife, I thought that not only does it have a really good payoff with how it works out and stuff like that, but it was very emotional, and it showcased a lot of a guy that's been through hell. And then the rest of the cast were good too. It's great seeing his two other comrades that are accompanying him on the mission, like they were in the first film. And you get to see a lot more of them this time, with showcasing a lot of what they can do in certain things. And they really do push a lot of the stakes high with this film, with how the villains in this are really, not messing around. And I think that really contributes to the first 2/3 of the film, because during the first 2/3, the action is really spot on point. And I thought the villain in this, was really good and intimidating. And there's a certain kind of con I do have with some of the later things. I will when it gets to some of the action toward the later half of the film. But I'll get into some of my cons. I kind of hold back on that. But for the most part, I still enjoyed the villain. I just think that there's more to it that they could have probably maybe done more with, if that makes sense. Because I really felt like he did feel like kind of a standard bad guy for the most part. But it's kind of what you would expect from this kind of film trying to come off of the first film. And with the whole family thing happening, it does add some more risks that are involved with it, because it's another con I do kind of have. It also has to do with pretty much, it also has to do with these brothers that are involved, because not only is it dealing with the father, but also the brother that's pretty much calling the shots and stuff like that. So both villains, I think, shine their own regard, but I think that there's just a lot more stuff that they really could have added to their characters to really like flesh some things out, so to speak. But then the rest of but also seeing Idris Elba was a lot of fun too. Though it's a missed opportunity, because I thought they were going to use him more compared to what I kind of saw him in the trailers and stuff. but it just seemed like he was just kind of there to really fill in as just giving exposition, and he doesn't really have much of a purpose other than really giving Chris Hemsworth the mission and stuff. So I did feel like that was kind of a wasted opportunity there. But he still was fun to see on screen, you know, and he does have some funny moments, especially at the beginning and things like that. And then to get into some of the action, you know, the way that he was able to do a lot of the camera work and stuff, especially with seeing this long, almost shot like one take where it's 21 minutes long going through this train and everything. Not only was it really well timed, but just it got me into that really vibe of like playing a video game in a good way. You know, I really like when action movies like this take that. You know, seeing movies like this in other films, like we saw in some of the John Wick films and things like that, like they really know how to shoot these kind of action scenes. I'm glad we're still seeing stuff like that in action movies. It may not happen often, but when it does, when you're seeing a lot of practical effects done and you're seeing a lot of good stunt work and everything, that really showcases, especially in the first like big action scenes in the beginning of the film. And especially this whole scene where he is like kicking ass when people in the prison and stuff, like it gets so brutal and out there. It's nonstop, and it really gave me a whole lot of excitement. Into some other things I have to enjoy too is, you know, the movie puts itself in at a good like pace where it's going from point A to point B, and you know it's really anything can really happen to the characters, and I really appreciate that this movie doesn't hold back with trying to give you on that kind of level with it. So that was great. But if I do have to get into some of my cons, I will say two things that do kind of hold the movie back. One, I felt like the son character in this, I think, was one of the most annoying characters and made some of the most dumbest decisions that every time I seen this kid on screen, I just felt like I just wanted to keep calling. I was watching at home, watching it on Netflix and stuff. I was just looking at my, man, this little shit's getting into so much territory that he's getting so many people involved, either in trouble or he's getting into so much stuff where he can't really decide what to do. And that mainly has to do with a certain thing that happens in the film, but I won't go into spoilers with that because the way it just happened, it's like, you know, this kid never really has much of a resolution until you get toward the end of it. And I didn't really feel like it was earned the way it happened with his character. And so that was that is one of the only characters in the film I found myself really flat out just annoyed with that. And then the other thing too is that while I was really appreciating the way the first 2/3 of the film is really keeping the action going and very, you know, and very high octane and everything, I felt like when it gets to the third half, when it gets to the last act, when we get to the climax, it seems like it could have been on a bigger scale, so to speak, because we spent about the first 2/3 of the film where you're seeing nonstop enemies coming left and right, but then when it gets toward the end, it's like we only deal with like a very small conflict that takes place, and I think that was a kind of a really missed opportunity with them really going above and beyond. And so even though I enjoyed the way it played out with the payoff, I felt like there was still more that they could have really added more with. It made it even bigger. It felt like they kind of ran out of money when they got to the third act. But other than that, though, I still had a really good time with this one, and it definitely will probably at least be one of the most brutalist action films I've seen in the year, along with John Wick Chapter 4 and everything, and Sisu. So there's at least that going for it. And so with that, because there were some other things that kind of held the movie back on certain aspects, I'm going to give the movie a very high, extremely high, compelling grade on the Film Freaks meter. So for those of you who have also seen Extraction 2 and also the first one, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.